Koinange live. And you know, if it's Wednesday, it's all about politics, in particular, the state of the nation. And tonight, my guest is, I tell you, I guess the best way to describe him, one of my friends on Twitter described it best. She said, a jack of all trades. He's a lawyer. He's a budding politician. He's a farmer. He's a chef on occasion. He's a political analyst. He's a polo player. All rolled into one. What a guy. Many of you remember him at Capital FM in the morning. He was the voice. We miss him terribly. I wish he'd come on. This is a man whose voice we need to hear because there's so much happening in the nation today, from NACADA to NYS to land issues. He's an expert. I'm gonna ask him about that, and so much more. So when Chris Foot comes on the show, you know you need to sit back. His Twitter handle is @CKFoot. Mine is @Koinange Jeff. We're using the hashtag State of the Nation. Start tweeting. Start calling. Start a conversation. Because Chris Foot is in the house.
Jeff, great to see you.
Sharp, man. Sharp.
I told you. You said, Chris, put on something sharp. I got on the three-piece for you.
Down to the socks.
The socks. Now, the socks, those are from my days when I used to go to court. We weren't allowed, we had to wear dark clothes, dark ties. The only indulgence you could have was socks because the judge couldn't see the socks. So when you're standing there making some advocacy, your mates are looking at your socks. The judge can't see them. So from those days, I've still got them. Old socks, very old socks indeed.
But do you always wear bright socks?
Always bright socks. That's my one indulgence. Everything else is pretty mundane and boring. Yeah. But that's my one indulgence.
It's good to see you, man.
Yeah. Good to see you. Good to be back here.
We miss you on air. At Capital in the morning, you were smoking.
I love those days, apart from the ridiculous hours. You know, the hours were, you know, you're getting there at 4:35. Actually, why am I lying now? Okay, we're getting at 1 minute to 6. But no, but I tell you what, the people who listened, the feedback,
you were great.
I loved it. I loved it.
You need to come back.
Well,
we need a voice like yours.
Anyone looking for a radio host once a week, though? No more. We'll discuss.
Lots of cash.
Jeff, you'll negotiate for me. But it's good to be back here. You've been upgraded. You've got smart bench. You've got
Sonny on
gold,
makeup.
Sonny on makeup, who's looking delightful. Last time I came, you had one camera guy. You've got 3. You had a security guy outside. Getting into the Intercontinental
is...
I mean, I think Obama was not going to be able to get in.
No, Fort Knox.
Honestly, they did some indecent things to me coming in. That was a bit awkward. And pretty punchy.
Yeah. Thank you, man.
It's good to be here.
Mindaleo.
Bye-bye, you're doing well.
Thank you, brother. So listen, our nation, the state of our nation. Look, NYS, because, you know, if we would talk about NACADA, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, but it's so fluid right now. We don't know who said what, when, where, and you know, it's all so convoluted. Let's put NACADA aside. That's for another day. NYS seemed to be a thing that was going quite well. And then all of a sudden, people are rioting, people are burning toilets, and it looks like a big mess of a good intention.
You know, I mean, that's something I must say. NYS, I haven't really been following so much because to try and get an objective view, even in the media now, is incredibly difficult. And I mean, you see the tragedy of guys, you know, trying to treat the government a lesson by burning the toilets and trashing, you know, everything they've got, as if that's going to have any effect on anyone in power.
No.
I mean, that was the irony of it. But I think the essence is, on the scorecard, corruption is something that we are lagging on, and we've got to do something about it. And I think, like a lot of things, at the top, they've got the vision, they know what they want to do about it. It's how do you execute it? And maybe it involves executing people.
Is the will there? Executing, I like that. Is the will there, Chris? You know, is the initiative there?
I think that from what I've seen, I genuinely think the initiative is there. I think the will is there. I think we're very fortunate to have a president who has no desire or no need to go out and make money. And I think he's got, you know, from that side, there is certainly no, you know, the agenda of the government is clear. But like with many things, by the time it gets down to the actual execution, something goes awry. And the question with corruption is, where is that problem? Is it the EACC? Is it CID? Is it, you know, the procurement guys around them? I mean, there's so many layers of it, so where do you start? And I think everyone, globally, when you look at these things, you see it starting at the top, and people at the top have to go. And until that day happens, and until close associates, feel the pain, I'm afraid we'll still be in this cycle.
Well, look, 5 cabinet secretaries had been suspended for a while, and then all of a sudden it looks like most of them were coming back.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's need here to have an efficient internal monitoring unit of sorts that actually has the powers to deliver. It's politically independent, people of integrity, and people who are passionate. I used to do prosecution when I was in the UK as a barrister, and the level and competence of prosecution here is needing, to say the least. And I think we just need to bring in a small core of guys, and their mandate is just to go and deliver on justice. Because I think one of the big issues having at the moment is people are losing confidence in the rule of law in this country, and that really is the cornerstone of any democracy.
Yeah.
And rule of law is not just about whether it's the matatus, whether it's the litter. It's fundamental things like seeing no one being prosecuted effectively for corruption.
You said everything starts at the top, emanates at the top. The president, well-meaning, the minions may be afraid to talk to him, may be afraid to convey messages to him. Do you think there's a lack of communication somewhere?
There's always going to be a communication breakdown between the head of state and the lower echelons of administration. I mean, one thing I've learned, though, in my capacity as the chairman of the Kenya Film Commission, is we have, and it's something that's changed hugely in the last few years, we have some of the most competent technocrats in this country that I've ever come across. And you'll be surprised by that. People are always surprised when I say that. The level of competence with our civil servants, especially the higher civil servants, is out of this world.
Right.
So the competence is there, the capacity is there.
What's lacking?
What is lacking is the desire to do so. And I think a lot of them, speaking to them, have just either got to the stage where they're so frustrated that their intentions have come to naught, that it's either join them or beat them or join them, and they've decided, well, to be honest, I'm not going to join them, so I'm just going to stand by. And there needs to be a bridge somehow between those high-level technocrats who want to do the right thing, some of the PSs, some of the top secretaries and directors in government departments, who really are doing the right thing and have been doing the right thing for probably 30, 40 years, but have just got frustrated with the fact that they're seeing everybody else eating.
You're a pretty outspoken guy, Chris, and you speak your mind all the time, every time I'm with you. Would you be able to tell someone like the president what was right, what was wrong? Would someone like you?
If I was ever given the chance, I'd have a very candid conversation with him.
Without fear, without favor, without...
Yeah, but I do believe that there are some people who can do that with him, and I think he has, obviously. I'm not privy to it, but he must have people who he listens to. But traditionally in many cultures, the chief always had somebody who who told him the truth, and your role was to tell the chief or the king the truth, and if you didn't, then your head came off. And you were to tell him unpopular things as well. And I think sometimes, and this is where we've got to be very careful with, sometimes where we have an opposition that is negative on absolutely everything, you go into this fortress sort of mentality where everything is being put out as negative. No one's saying well done on this, well done on that, everything's negative. So you say, why do we even have to listen to that? Whereas if they're a bit more proactive and a bit more constructive in their dialogue, it would encourage them, I think, to open up and say, right, actually, you've got a fair point on this, let's look in this a little bit deeper, etc. But I do think the will's there at the top. The question is, why isn't it trickling down to the bottom?
Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears. Security. Big issue. Terrorism, huge issue. And there was a terrorist attack thwarted not too long ago at a military camp in Lamu. So it looks like some things are being done.
Jeff, the security we've got to split into two, the terrorism and the internal security. Terrorism, I'm afraid I'm of the view that we're getting it wrong. I have a certain background in this. And one of the main issues is, traditionally, if you look at terrorists globally over the last 100 years and how those battles have been won, first of all, you send in the military for a short period of time just to remind them who's boss. Then after that, it boils down to good policing and good intelligence. At the same time, you're running a political dialogue in order to reach an end game. And if you look at everything, whether you look at the Shining Path guys currently, or you go right back to the IRA or whoever it is, Those are the way they've done it. Military followed by good policing, good intelligence, and a political dialogue in the process. What we've done is we've got stuck on step one, which is the military option. And the military option was fine to a certain degree. And our guys in Somalia, most of them are doing a great job, but we need to move on from that. And the good policing involves good community work, and that's where we've woefully failed, is to bring in the communities. And without bringing the communities, we're going to be at loggerheads and fighting. And I think if there was one criticism I'd make on this issue, is we've militarized too much of our security. We have militaries, it's just far too militarized in terms of decision making. So the mindset is a military mindset. And the military mindset is fine when you're out there. And that is why most countries actually in their constitutions have very clear rules as to military engagement within that country.
Right.
And we have not even adhered to our own constitution on that in terms of, the use of the military here. The other day I got the shock of my life. I was driving in town and there was somebody, a VVIP being driven around, and his military escort, his escort was military. Now that for me was quite disturbing. We've also had issues where historically the military have only reacted on particular issues, but we've had issues now where the military have come out of camps in Kenya without orders. Yeah. So it's a very slippery path, but also on the terrorism side, what I find disturbing is we are not putting enough effort on the policing and on the intelligence side. Our intelligence community are brilliant, but I'm of the mindset we need to have more people on the ground. Technology will cover us to a certain extent, and I know the British and the Americans are giving us amazing technology in terms of that. But for all their failings, the days when you had special branch in every single village in Kenya, and you took off your flip-flop and they reported back to Nairobi you took off your flip-flop, that was part of that's the price we have to pay if we're going to live in a secure environment. And then where is the political dialogue as well? I'm hoping it's going on, but we're not hearing about it.
Yeah.
And that needs to go on. Although we're dealing with an enemy who don't have an end game in terms of something that we could deliver on, because we're never going to deliver a caliphate for them in this region.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kaiseri, new to the job. We know he's been there several months.
Yeah.
Doing all right so far?
I know as much as you do in terms of what I've read in the paper, but in terms of the response, in terms of how we're doing it, I'm almost of the view that we sometimes need to look at getting outside help on some of these things. There is plenty of people in the world, plenty of other jurisdictions who offered us help, not just in terms of the intelligence side, which we do get, but in terms of how do we actually deal with this. And maybe we have to look at really radical things, like maybe we hire in a whole lot of mercenaries who just go and do their stuff on the northern frontier.
And take care of business.
And take care of stuff. We've got to start thinking left field about this. But I think most people would agree it's not working at the moment. And we have to be proactive, and we're being reactive. Yeah. And I'm afraid that's a lot of the things we're doing at the moment is just being reactive. And of course, the tragedy with intelligence is we only hear of their failures. And I guarantee you there's a lot more successes we haven't heard about. Absolutely. But the nature of their operations is that we can't hear about those. So I'm afraid they will also always come out looking bad, because we only flag the times when things go wrong.
Yeah. Speaking of things going wrong, 2 years later, almost to the month day, Westgate is reopening later this month. 2 years later.
I know, isn't that profound? Oof. That is very profound.
Yeah. And, it's a tough one, huh?
It's going to be very, very hard, that. Yeah. And I think, collectively as a nation, one of the upsides of having a relatively thick skin and a short memory is that we bounce back. And I suspect we'll all be back there shopping. It's one of those things as Kenyans, we're surrounded by, classic cases. You speak to any of your friends from Europe, by the time they're my age, your age, early 30s, they might have lost one aunt from cancer.
Right.
Most of us here, we're on the 30s or 40s of people who we've lost from AIDS, road accidents, robberies, malaria, you name it, terrorism.
Yeah.
And in a way, that has allowed us, not on a personal level, because we always suffer and grieve, but on a collective level, it's allowed us to be a lot more resilient than I suspect was in the Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab business model. Yeah. And that will be to our credit.
It's going to be tough, though.
It's going to be very tough.
Will you go?
Will I go?
To Westgate?
Absolutely. And this is one of the concerns I've expressed to a lot of our international partners on travel advisories, is when the July bombings happened in London, they came up very clearly and said business as normal. It was business as normal, that's how we won the war. We're not going to change anything, we're going to carry on doing the same thing and just show them nothing changed. And yet when we did the same here, they put a travel advisor on us. And that's playing into the, for all the obligations they have to their citizenry. I'm a great advocate, there should be no travel advisories anywhere. You let your citizens go wherever they want to go, they take their risks, and they do it on an informed basis. But the problem is, as soon as you give a travel advisory, it plays into the terrorist hands because they say, yeah, we've now punished Kenya again. We did an attack, and now we're hitting them economically, we're hitting them in their tourism. So I'm an advocate for all travel advisories should go, not just in Kenya, but I think they serve no purpose in terms of the war against terrorism.
Yeah. Speaking of tourism, we've been hard hit.
We've been incredibly hard hit, and I'm involved in the tourist enterprise, but I've been fortunate enough to I was on the presidential task force.
That's right.
For the recovery of tourism, and that was an incredibly powerful task force. We had people from the private sector, we had buy-in from all levels of government, some amazing recommendations, and yet
did you submit them?
Well, as far as I understand, that hasn't been given to the president yet. And that was a task force which the recommendations they've made are stellar, and they come from the industry, and they come from industry talking with government.
But what do you mean it hasn't been given to the president? Did you submit it to whoever you're supposed to submit it to?
Yes, I think the chair of our task force gave it to the appropriate cabinet secretary, and from what I gather, it hasn't moved on from that. So this is again the sort of thing I talk about, which is the breakdown in delivery. I'm sure there's a valid reason for it, but there is that frustration then that people have done their work, but then what happened?
Yeah.
And those are the sort of things which we need to just tweak a little bit and move forward.
Chris, I want to talk about that more after the break. The tourism aspect. Of course, we've got some VIPs coming soon, from Obama to the Pope to a huge conference in December, WTO. So that's going to boost tourism. That's why you see Nairobi so
spruced up.
Spruced up.
Well, I mean, I I do find it funny because every road where there's a new flower bed, you know that POTUS is probably going to be going down that road at some stage. Are you going to see him?
I don't think so. I'm not on the list.
Make space for him, honestly.
On the bench?
Yeah, come on. I know you take his call just once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like Lupita. Did she come on the bench as well?
She has no time.
She has no time.
Yeah, she's busy.
She's busy.
Did you go to see her? You're chairman of the film commission.
Yeah, I didn't get an invitation.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, I'm just a spanner boy in the film industry.
You're chairman of the film commission.
I know. That's what happens when you're from Molo. Anyway, I gather it was very encouraging for the people who went and saw her.
Really? You're from Molo?
Well, that's where I farm, yeah. But
with this English?
You'll be surprised. You listen to my Swahili, then you'd say, this guy's from Molo. My Kalenjin, on the other hand, you'd say that guy's from England.
Kongoi missing?
Kongoi missing. You sound like Robbie Koitaba. Anyway.
So lots more to talk about, Chris. State of the nation. That's what we're talking about.
Very excited to be here.
From corruption to insecurity to land issues. You're an expert in land issues, Chris.
There's some things brewing there we need to talk about.
Are they ugly?
All I would say is the legislation that is being put through at the moment is probably some of the most dire legislation this country has ever seen, and the most dangerous legislation. And there's people trying to sneak it in very quietly. I'll flag it very shortly.
Do that. Yeah. Let's take a break. At CK Foot, would you go to school? Kenton College?
Yeah, don't like to talk about that much.
With no knowledge?
All they eat is bread and porridge. Sadly. But then after that, things got on the up.
Up and up. At Koinange Jeff, the hashtag. I have a new hashtag. Do you mind?
No.
I was thinking of it and I forgot. I had a mind block.
Yeah.
Hashtag is taking stock. How's that?
Sounds good. It's got a cooking connotation as well. I like it.
Taking stock. JKL, we'll take a break. We are with one smart gentleman. I'll tell you, it pays to go to good schools.
You know what I'm slightly concerned about?
What?
My relatives up north, when you say taking stock,
yes,
they might do it literally.
Ngombe. JKL takes a break. We'll be back in a moment.